Papaji was married for a very long time with the same woman. Did he ever talk about his relationship with his wife, or what did his wife think about the spirituality of her husband or him as a teacher?
This is a long story, and the best place to start it is several hundred years ago when Papaji said that he was a yogi in an ashram in southwest India, near to where the Sringeri mat is, on the Tungabhadra river in Karnataka. He was a Krishna devotee in that life, which is where he got all his Krishna vasanas, his passion for Krishna came from that life. He said he had a temple on the Tungabhadra river and that he'd installed a Krishna statue there. And at one point he said, I had a dream when I was in that area. I suddenly remembered my last life. I went back. I suddenly remembered where my old ashram was. I went there, and he said my samadhi from that life had been washed away by the river, but the statue I installed in that temple was still there. So he said, when I was the guru in this ashram, there was he said I was a very old man. I was a celibate yogi. I was going into samadhi all the time, but there was a very young, attractive girl there who picked coconuts in my ashram, and he said I was very, very attracted to this girl, but he said in that lifetime I was a celibate yogi, I behaved myself, but I did have a very strong attraction to this girl, which I did nothing about. So he had a very bizarre end to that particular life. He went into samadhi and was so deeply in that state, his devotees thought he was dead. And one complete lunatic, who must have been one of his devotees, decided to test whether he was dead or not by breaking the top of his skull with the tip of a machete. Now what this was meant to prove, I have no idea. So Papaji said he was aware of what they were going to do, what they were planning to do, but he was so absorbed in his samadhi state that he wasn't able to stop them from doing this is he dead or alive experiment with the machete. And he said, I died from the blow from my own devotees. He said, I was buried in that ashram, the samadhi was washed away. Fast forward a few hundred years, and he said around in the late 1920s my parents started looking for a girl for me to marry. At that time marriages took place at quite a young age. I think Papaji was 16 when he married, and I'm guessing the girl must have been a year or two younger. So he was married to this girl in the Punjab in 1929, and then when Papaji took this job in Madras so he could come and see Bhagavan and got his final experience of realization, liberation with Bhagavan, he acquired the ability to see past lives, or occasionally they would reveal themselves to him. And he said he suddenly realized to his shock and horror that this girl he'd been married to for 16 years was the self-same coconut picker from his ashram 300 years before. And he said that's how it is. That's how samsara works. 300 years ago, there I was playing the great yogi. I was going into samadhi. I was mad for Krishna. But I also had this strong sexual desire for the coconut picker, so I didn't get enlightened. I got reborn, and who should turn up as my wife but the coconut picker I'd been lusting after 200 or 300 years before. So this was a bit of a shock. He said, I had some karma, some dramas to work out with this lady. We got married, we had sex, I had lots of children. But I don't think, either in the last life or in this life, that she was a very spiritually inclined lady. She was a very good person. The people who I talked to, who lived with her in Lucknow, said she was kind, generous, helpful. She was the sort of person who would bind a community together. She was always going to people on her street who were sick, offering them food assistance. She was the local unofficial social services department of her neighborhood. She was a good woman who took her duties as a wife, as a mother seriously, but never really had the passion for God that her husband had. She did go to see Ramana Maharishi, of course. Papaji said, you must come and see this man. She went, and she admitted that she got very quiet, very peaceful with Ramana Maharishi. She wasn't a frequent visitor, but she was quite impressed with him. Now, Papaji wasn't home a lot. I think the karma with his wife ran its course. Notionally, they were still married, but over the 40s, 50s, 60s, he used to come home less and less and spend less and less time in his wife's household. He ran 2 houses in Lucknow. The first were his parents' house, his mother, the one who had been the big Krishna devotee who'd made him do all the Krishna practices. She was much more spiritually inclined. He used to give satsang in her house. And then there was his main house in downtown Lucknow, where his wife lived. He would go there occasionally, he would have satsangs there. But for a long time, whenever he was in Lucknow, he stayed in the house of his parents. I won't say he was estranged from his wife, but as the decades went by, she played a smaller and smaller role in his life. I don't think that she ever thought much of him as a spiritual teacher. She would watch all of these people come to the house, she would watch him teach. She was a very good provider. So when people come to your house, whatever the hour of the day or night, if you're the good Indian housewife, you make them some food, you give them a drink. So she never skimped on that. She must have thought it was a nuisance, people coming at all hours of the day and night. But she was always the gracious hostess. She always looked after everybody who came, and there were a lot of people. But I don't think she ever got who Papaji really was. She didn't understand why all these people were mobbing him. I don't think she felt any of the power that all these complete strangers were feeling on their first day. And one devotee told me that he talked to her one day. He'd had this great experience, and he went to her and said, "Oh, you're so lucky to have such a wonderful husband like this." And she said, I've sat with Ramana Maharishi. I know what it's like to sit with a wonderful teacher. I got quiet and peaceful in Bhagavan's presence. I never get quiet and peaceful sitting with this man jabbing her finger at her husband. So I think it was a dramatic relationship. I think Papaji didn't have a lot of time for her in the end, because he was more interested in spending his time with people who cared about self-realization, who wanted to attain it. If you weren't on that wavelength, even if you were wife or family, he didn't have a lot of time for you. And I suspect his wife possibly felt a bit neglected, but she was aware of her dharma. She knew what her duty was, she knew what her responsibility was. She looked after all the people who came. She was gracious, she was hospitable, she was friendly, she was charitable. But I really don't get the impression from anyone I've spoken to that she ever really cottoned on to the fact that she was living with one of the greatest and most powerful teachers of the 20th century.